Don't be afraid of what it is, because ultimately a diagnosis is help. A diagnosis is clarity. A diagnosis will hopefully make you feel better. Like, I don't care what it's called, just make me feel better.
I'm excited to be here with Christopher, the red beard video guy.
That makes it sound like I'm a guy who does videos about red beards. No, I do music and entertainment. I'm dabbling into other side projects like sports content, but mostly I like to keep it fun and interesting. Why not come over and
Wonderful.
do a heavy mental health podcast?
About 18 months ago, you were diagnosed with ADHD, right?
Yes, more like 15, almost 18 years ago, when I was around 30 years old. I had some impulse control issues that kind of manifested itself around into my late 20s, going into my 30s. And it led to me doing a fair amount of things of a sexual nature, strip clubs, private shows that were out of character for me. I was a family guy, I have kids and the whole thing. But what wound up happening is that I still haven't fully reevaluated the process under which I landed on a bipolar disorder diagnosis. The long story short is that I was doing these things, I got caught, and my wife at the time kind of recognizing that this wasn't like me just being kind of just a bad person or a bad guy, that it was definitely something out of the ordinary for me character wise. So I started going to therapy, and I went to couples therapy. I never really sought out one-on-one personal type of thing. Through those sessions, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I'm thankful for the bipolar disorder diagnosis, and I'll get to that in a moment. I got remarried to a woman who is neurodivergent, who has autism, who has ADHD diagnosed, both of those things. She's just right off the bat. I have two sons that have autism. I have two nephews and a niece who are profoundly autistic and have all the neurodivergent issues. I could not figure out. After she said it, it was like the glass broke. She's like, have you ever thought that maybe you don't have bipolar disorder? Like maybe this is ADHD stuff, like kind of manifesting. And sure enough, I went to my doctor, my PCP, and she was like, yeah, I always thought it was weird that you were diagnosed as bipolar too, but it was so long ago, because she's a fairly new doctor to me. She's known me for a few years now. She's like, I don't see any bipolar traits in anything you ever tell me at all. But she's like, ADHD, absolutely, without a doubt. So, and then the more research I did, bipolar disorder and ADHD are very closely linked. If there were two circles, there'd be a lot of middle overlap. Through the process of two different therapists and my primary care physician, we shed the bipolar disorder diagnosis for ADHD. And then further, about 6 months after that, officially being diagnosed with autism as well. We can expand on how these things overlap a lot, but that's how I arrived at my diagnosis. It was a suggestion by my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and the ball started rolling from there. I'm a social worker. It's what I do. It's my ex-wife's career. She studied this in college, and somehow we both were like, yeah, that's weird. Then it clicked. It just made sense for both of us.
That's interesting because last year I sought out to get an assessment to test myself for autism. And come to find out, I am on the spectrum. So I'm part of the club. I have a couple more alphabets, that I've been diagnosed with: ADHD, borderline personality disorder, depression, all of the things I think I have experienced. But it doesn't take away from who you are. It just helps you better navigate this thing called life. I don't know if you can relate to this, Christopher, but for a long time, I felt different. I felt like I didn't belong in places that I would be in. And I couldn't figure out why I was so uncomfortable in spaces around other people. Once I got my diagnosis, it just started to make sense. Once you do the research and figure out, oh, this is why I do that, it's like a light bulb goes off, and there is a sense of peace that you have with yourself, because now you stop reckoning with something being wrong with you. And now you can identify, okay, this is what it is. Now I know how to treat it, target it, and live with it successfully. you were diagnosed over 15 years ago. So you lived a good portion of your life as someone with bipolar. And
Medicated and the whole thing. Yep.
yeah, that
So
is so bananas.
here's where my story becomes incredibly interesting because I've gone through everything from I went through that, alcoholic, like we went through that. I went through a period of time where I drank a lot. After I got divorced, I never drank until I was like 33, 34 years old. I had gotten divorced. I got married when I was 22 and we had kids right away. Like we had 6 kids, bang, bang, bang. In 13 years, we were married 13 years. I had 6 kids. I never got to live like my 20s. I started doing stuff, going out to bars and drinking. I don't think I ever really got out of control. But what wound up happening was learning now that I have more or less been masking my entire life everywhere in my own house, when I was growing up, when I was with my friends. I was behaving the way that people thought I should have, or that I felt was going to be acceptable. What wound up happening was that I would have these angry outbursts at a point. I've never been a violent person. I've never hit my wife or my kids, but I used to yell, not scream, but get snippy, like parents do. Because I'm a New Yorker and because of the family I grew up in, I would get sarcastic and caustic, not have a check. That was part of the bipolar diagnosis. Now I feel like I'm almost never angry. Even while I was on the bipolar medications, I would still have these outbursts, but I would learn coping skills. So I have all the coping skills of someone with bipolar disorder, but I don't have bipolar disorders. I'm not happy that I was on psychotropic meds for 15 years that I didn't need to be on. I'm sure that I will have some measure of health ramifications later on in life because of that, and that's really, really going to anger me. As of right now, this first 18 months to 2 years that I've been dealing with it, I'm so much more comfortable now. I'm so much happier in general. I used to internalize a lot of things, and again, something that corresponds with both ADHD and bipolar disorder is like this idea of racing thoughts. Like someone with ADHD's thoughts race too. Like they don't stop. Like it's just a constant thing, especially if you add in the autistic element, your brain is constantly on the move. But now I just let it play out. I don't think of it as a problem. I just go, okay, I've learned how to apply my bipolar coping skills with the ADHD because they're kind of dealing with the same problem, trying to slow the wheel down. Sometimes the wheel just gets spinning and it doesn't stop. And you're like, it's got to stop. I use the same type of techniques therapists way back when used to call it rabbit holing, where you start on one thing. I could take any conversation with anybody, and if something was said that was a little off kilter, why did they say that? Are they mad at me? Did I say something? Did I do this? And before I know it, I've solved the problem, but I've also seen it to its conclusion to where we're not friends anymore. Now I'm divorced. Like, what's up with that? That's where my brain would go. So, like, one of the techniques was just literally physically say the word stop. Like, when your brain just starts going, just say stop. That will, at least for 2 seconds, stop the process, because you have to engage your brain into talking and saying the word stop. So I would just say stop. I have found that I'm way more comfortable with all of this now, because I used to think things like that were weird because I was masking. But now I'm like, whatever. It's just what it is. I don't care what people think of me now. It doesn't.
Yeah, I find that in my experience, I'll be 48 this year in June. What I've found is the older I get, the more comfortable in my skin I become. Do you think that you accepting your diagnosis and everything that has happened to you in your past comes with age, or is it just, do you think you've gotten some clarity from the diagnosis that helps you understand yourself better?
I think clarity comes with age, and whether you know something or not. You know what I mean? Whether you learn something officially or not, time is always the best teacher. It's just a matter of whether or not you're receptive to the information. Last year was kind of a rough year for me because they had a rough time with me, all the things that they knew. I had been like, maybe I am an alcoholic. Maybe I do have a problem with this. I've kind of gone back and said, I did all the screenings. A psychiatrist and a psychologist, like I've seen both talk therapy, and they're both like, you're in no way an alcoholic. You don't meet any of the criteria because you had a period of time where you drank a lot and maybe got out of control a few times. That does not make you an alcoholic. That just makes you irresponsible those times, and that's just what it is. But sometimes people feel more comfortable when there's a label that they can point to and go, well, that's the problem. I own those moments. I'm not trying to shirk my responsibility. I'm just no longer saying, hey, I don't think I'm an alcoholic anymore, so maybe let's not refer to me as that, because that's not the story. One of my family members was adamant, you have to get back on those meds because I can notice a change. I'm like, yeah, but what is the change you're noticing? Is the change you're noticing something that makes you uncomfortable because you knew me a certain way and now I'm slightly different? I am slightly different now. And everybody had to come to grips with that. Here we are 18 months later. It seems like people are coming around. My relationship with my kids is getting better, but it was rough. I had to fight them for my own identity. I can't just be what you want me to be because it makes you comfortable. And they seem to have come around on that for the most part. To answer your question, both time and space and age and all of that will absolutely teach you lessons, even if you don't want to learn them. Like, time is always going to teach you something no matter what. I think that my diagnosis and the wife, who I've been married to for 2 years next month, her pushing me to at least look into it. And she wasn't aggressive about it. She just said it and it clicked. For some reason, no one ever suggested it to me before that I may be ADHD or I may have autism. Like, no one ever suggested, I don't know how that's possible. When I think of my life, childhood, and how I grew up, they didn't throw the word autism around in the 80s and the 90s. It wasn't really a thing. But I look back on it now and I'm like, hell, autistic. Holy crap. Are you kidding me? You know, I used to write lists like it was my job. I used to take the back of records and write down the song titles in order and memorize them. Bands that I love, I can still tell you what the third track on Kiss's third record from 1975 is because of that. If that's not an autistic trait, I don't know what is.
That's amazing. So we're talking about diagnosis here today and misdiagnosing, but also finding the awareness once you do get the right treatment plan and living a successful life. What are some of the things you've been able to do to bring this whole thing full circle?
Well, it's made me feel less bad about myself. It makes me embrace the thing I'm struggling with right now. I'm currently going through a struggle at this moment where I have a job, I'm a social worker, and I run a group home. I work 40-hour blocks. So I really only work 2 days a week. That's it. I work my 40 hours straight. I sleep at my job, and then I'm done for the week. So like Saturday through halfway through Thursday, I have nothing to do. But being an American and living the way that we do, paycheck to paycheck and whatever, you have a bunch of side hustles. So, you know, I do a YouTube channel and I'm a broadcaster. I've been on the radio. I have a million creative ideas. I'm a highly creative person. I find myself struggling with decision paralysis in the worst way. And then I start to fight with myself to say, well, you need to be productive. You need to be productive. And that's like this script that's in my head all the time. So add in the ADHD aspect of it where, you know, you start to pressure yourself and you start to get on it. But then you're like, oh, well, what do I want to start? What do I want to do? What project do I want to do? Unless I have something like this that's scheduled. Even this, I had a hard time showing up on time today because I woke up and I was like, okay, well, I got to get my coffee and then I get my, and before I know it, I'm lost in the details and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to do that. I'll often blow up for my own stuff if someone else is not dependent on it. I knew you were dependent on me showing up, so I was going to do everything I can to be here. I'm never late for work. I don't have decision paralysis. When my decision is made for me, in the past, I would just be miserable. When I was under the bipolar disorder thing, I'd be like, well, this is just my brain and I suck and I'm just going to be miserable, and I would beat myself up all day and feel bad about myself. Now I start to feel myself do that and I go, ugh, I'm really, really kind of useless and did much of nothing today. And oh my God, the sun shone all day and I didn't even go outside. Now I just kind of go, well, whatever. I needed a day off, or maybe I'll do this tomorrow instead. So instead of putting it on myself as something negative, I just go, all right, well, it's just a day. And I try to find the things that I enjoy doing today. Like, oh, I played that video game or I watched that movie, even if it was something mindless, as long as it brought me enjoyment and peace within that time, then it wasn't a waste of time. I have to stop thinking about every waking moment needs to be filled with something. So I think my mindset on it has changed. I don't take it personally anymore within myself. I attribute it to this is just how my brain works, and some days are going to be worse than others. And you just got to try and get through it as best you can. Of course, I have my days where I feel like I'm a piece of trash. That still happens. I have a good support system. It's good having a partner who looks out for me, understands me, doesn't pressure me, and doesn't say, well, you should really just get up today or do something. I don't have a lot of days where I lay in bed all day, but it happens. A day or two where I just get completely paralyzed within my brain, and I'm like, I'm just going to lay here all day, and that's fine. That's just what it is.
I can relate to that. I used to suffer with beating myself up about being productive because I'm a business owner, I'm a full-time student, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and I have all of these different roles, and there's a lot to get accomplished throughout the day. If I'm not productive, I may say, it's okay. 2 or 3 or 4 days of feeling like you start to feel bad about yourself. You start to question your ability to get things accomplished. That can be a downward spiral where you can start touching and kissing with depression, anxiety, all of the things that go along with the negative talk that we hear inside of our heads. But one of the things that has been able to help me is giving myself grace and taking a nap. Taking a nap was paramount because I used to feel so guilty with all the things I had to get accomplished. And taking a nap in the middle of the day, you don't feel as accomplished as you should be in life. One day can pile up, and before you know it, you look back over your week and you ain't did.
Right, exactly. I just had that week last week where I took the whole week off. It was a conscious decision. I woke up the one day after my work schedule, I work Thursday, Saturday morning. So Saturday's day one. And usually when I get home from work, because it's a 40-hour block, I'm exhausted. So it takes me a day to recover. Saturday, I stay home, family, whatever. Sunday, I have my kids over. So that's a family day. Monday is my first day off where I'm going to do something that's not family, that's not work. Usually by Monday, I know what the rest of my week is going to look like. Like last week on Monday, I was not feeling well. I woke up and I was not feeling it. So I kind of mailed the whole weekend. I got some stuff done, but I didn't pressure myself. This week was different. I got up on Monday and I was like, okay, I'm doing okay. Let's do some things. I didn't go crazy. But then Tuesday, I had a hard time, but I had this scheduled, right? So this was a helper. So I've recognized that I need to put stuff in my way to look forward to. It's not a depression thing. It's not even a motivation thing. I think it's just as simple as I need to schedule some things. It's a very remedial thing, but if that's what my brain needs to function, then I need to go, okay, I need to be here at 2 o'clock. And if I make sure I'm there at 2 o'clock, that kind of begets more productivity going forward.
Right. I can relate to that because being neurodivergent myself, I have all of the signs and the symptoms, but that procrastination part or being productive can be deadly if you're not careful with yourself. Like I said, one of the things that really helped me was giving myself grace. Next month in May, I'm going to be publishing 2 books. My second anthology, Speak Up Against Stigma, Volume 2, and also a book called After the Fire. I tell my story about my suicide attempt. I set my whole house on fire with me in it because I wanted to die.
That's wild. Out of all the ways I'd want to go, that's probably the one I would not want.
My thought process was the carbon monoxide poisoning would knock me out before I even felt a thing. As radical as I may be, I also believe that there is a higher power, and I believe that my life was spared that day for a reason. So that I can meet you, so that I can do other things in this world to make an impact. And so I take my story, I leverage it to create a platform so other people like you can come on and share your story, because I believe that we're more alike than we are different. The more that we tell stories, the more that people can connect and feel less alone. So in closing, what would you want to say to someone who's watching this today who may be struggling with, am I bipolar? Do I have ADHD? Have I been misdiagnosed? From your experience, what is some light that you can shed on someone who may be struggling in their journey right now?
I mean, don't be afraid of it. You should not be afraid of it. I think it's interesting that the show is about stigma. That's the whole point of this. When I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder, one of the major I was so reluctant about it was the stigma attached to it. Every person that I've ever known or heard of that had bipolar disorder, that's usually used as, what are you, a crazy person? What are you, bipolar? That was always the thing, right? That was before I even knew what it meant or what it was really about. But that stigma kind of scared me. You need to not be afraid of that. I think that's the message. And it's the same thing with autism. I know people who want to attach the R word. They say that stuff, and everything has some sort of prerequisite thought process to it. I'm here to tell you that no neurodivergence is the same. Like, it's all different. It's every single person's version of autism or ADHD is completely different. And I think that's what frustrates people the most. I think that's the scariest part of what's going on in our government right now regarding talks about we're going to find out what the cause of autism is by September. It's called DNA, brain function. It's not a disease. But I think in general, whatever your ailment is, whatever your issues are, or whatever struggle you're having, don't be afraid of being labeled something. At the same time, don't let someone just label you something either. Have control of your own thing. If you have bipolar disorder, then you have bipolar disorder. Millions of other people have it too. If you have ADHD, then guess what? Most of us probably have ADHD on some level. So you're not alone. That's the number one thing. Even if you have the most rare things, someone else has it. That's how we know about it. You're not special, but you are special. It's hard to just say one thing about this. I think ultimately what I'm getting at is just be open. Just be open to possibilities and don't be afraid of what it is, because ultimately a diagnosis is help. A diagnosis is clarity. A diagnosis will hopefully make you feel better. Like, I don't care what it's called, just make me feel better.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the Speak Up Against Stigma podcast. It has been my pleasure to speak with you. I am just honored for you to open up and share your story with a complete stranger. It has been well worth the conversation. Thank you so much, Christopher. I really appreciate you stepping in and telling your story today.
Come check me out at Redbeard Videos on YouTube or on my Patreon. I talk to strangers all the time.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.